the name of the book is called Mit der Türken zum Suez Canal, with the Turks to the Suez Canal. And he writes, in the middle of the book, this is one who's actually reviewing the book, he said, it's interesting to see, this book is a gem, not only for lovers of military history, but it's interesting to see how Palestine of 90 years ago appeared to Kress. Kress is the author of this book. He writes, this German general writes, quote, a phenomenon that was extremely odd was how the war, World War I, caused an unprecedented upsurge in the battle between Zionists and not Zionists. A battle that turned ugly and did little to promote Jewish interests in general. At the same time, the non-Zionists, that is the Jews without political goals, mainly belonging to the Orthodox stream of Judaism, were the overwhelming majority in Palestine. The Zionists living in Palestine scarcely made up 5% of its population, but they were very active and fanatical and terrorized the non-Zionists, the non-Zionist Jews. During the war, the non-Zionists tried to free themselves from this terror with the help of the Turks. They feared justifiably that the activities of the Zionists would ruin the good relations that existed between the long-time Jewish inhabitants of Palestine and the Arabs, and that the Turks may adopt hardline policies that would harm them too, and it goes on. This is the truth. This is what the Jewish population was. They were non-Zionists, they were Orthodox Jews living in harmony with the Arab population. And the Arab population happens to be was the vast majority of the inhabitants in the land. Now, so the Zionists came in the beginning of the 20th century, and they created this rift and this mistrust of the Jewish people. It was, the Jewish population was in total opposition. They created something called the Aguda, the Eid Chareidis, a God-fearing community with our rabbis, leading rabbis, and they stood up, it was created just to fight Zionism. They weren't physically strong because these were people of the book. We were never a military people, except in the time of the Bible when we were supposed to be. But afterwards, when we were sent into exile, we are forbidden to take up arms. These were people, scholars, and all of a sudden these Zionist rebellious youth came with arms, and they killed and maimed Jews. I have a book here, and we have pictures. It's on our site also again, nkusa.org, where you can see how the Jews who fought the Zionists, they went out and they demonstrated against them, and you'll be able to see later, I'll leave it here on the table, how they were beaten, bloodied, and murdered by the Zionists, old people, women, children, I mean, totally, they were murdered. In fact, I think that the first martyr who died because fighting Zionism was a Jew. It was in the 1920s, and his name was Dr. Dahan. He was a diplomat from Denmark, from Amsterdam, and he came up, he became somebody who was looking for Judaism. And when he came up, he thought that being a Zionist was being a Jew. That's why he decided he wanted to be closer to God, so he went up to Palestine. And he comes into the community, he was searching for God, and all of a sudden he sees that the very Orthodox community is totally against Zionism. So we approached the leaders of the community, Rabbi Sonnenfeld, of blessed memory, who was the first of the leading of the Jewish community there, when they created this movement against Zionism. And he became very close with him. And he said to Rabbi Sonnenfeld, this is terrible, he said, what is going on here? Your voice is not being heard in Europe. Everybody thinks that the Jewish community is Zionist, and your voice is not heard, and you're being swallowed by them. Let me represent you. He was a diplomat, he knew many languages, and he said, I'm very well acquainted with the leaders in Europe. I will be able to help you. So he went up and he started representing. And the first move they did, they went and they presented a letter, a memorandum to King Hussein from I believe it was Transjordan. And so we have the letter here. It's like it's impossible for me to say, but it showed the loyalty of the Jewish community. And it's a letter that I have. It's on our site, the memorandum to King Hussein. And the Zionists said, listen, either you're going to stop what you're doing. They knew him. They were friendly with him because first he was in their camp. They said, either you're going to stop and desist or we're going to kill you. And they murdered him cold-bloodedly, the Haganah. And that was our first martyr. In 1947, after Rabbi Sonnenfeld, of blessed memory, passed away, the chief rabbi in 1947 was Rabbi Yosef Tzvi Dushinsky, the head of the Eid Chareidis, the God-fearing community. He sent a letter to the United Nations, and it's in the dockets of the United Nations. It's a communications to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Lake Success. And he writes, the Jewish Orthodox community of Jerusalem, of Eidach Haredus of Jerusalem, comprising 60,000 souls, 60,000 souls, object to the plea of including Jerusalem in the Jewish state and or its residents becoming automatically citizens of the Jewish state. It doesn't say the Zionist state, the state of Israel, the Jewish state. We don't want to be included in the Jewish state. Just to be very clear, that's what he said. This is the head of the Jewish community, a sage, the head of Judaism. He was brought up by the Aguda. Today the Aguda is part of the Shas, it's called, I believe, that they break off from them. They're a part of the government. Now they were actually formed to fight Zionism. So here you have what the view is, the true view of Judaism. Now even if nobody would share this view today, it is what Judaism is. We are forbidden by God to have a state. We are forbidden to oppress a people. We are forbidden to rebel against God. And all the things that I can go on and that emanates from Zionism, we are forbidden to do. So they have no right to represent Judaism or the Jewish people. I like to give an analogy. It would be as if somebody who's a very, very eloquent speaker, a person who's able to accomplish worlds, a brilliant man, but he's an atheist or a Buddhist, and he decides to run for the office of Pope in Rome. I think it would be ridiculous, and anybody understands that it's ridiculous, because it's not a job that has to do with how you're able to do accomplishments. It has to do with, it's a religion. You can't, so how could you, it's incongruous. The same thing with Zionism. How could they have the audacity to say they're representing Judaism, a religion, when they're totally rebelling against what the religion says? It's almost a quote after someone has to stop. But I mean, the whole law system of the school, they have a law system that's not based on the Talmud. It's based on a whole different system. They have a chief rabbi, their own chief rabbi, as a nice figure for the window dressing. And they have the whole, and they wave the Bible in front of anybody who stands in the way, and they say, we're the Jewish state. God promised. They'll roll their eyes. God promised us the state, and they use the Bible to legitimize this tragedy, this illegitimate state. But in truth, it's a farce. What they're doing is falsifying what it says in the Torah. Ask the authorities of Torah what it's all about. Unfortunately, what they were able to, after World War II, approach the Jews and say they were leaderless, the Jews, so they weren't able to fight back, and they had the Balfour Declaration where they were promised land, so they were able to approach this weakened Jewish community and say, come to us, we'll give you land. And they were able to swallow up Jews and get people in. Still in all, the Eidach Haredus, the Jewish people residing still in Palestine, stood up in opposition and fought and fought and fought. You didn't hear our fights because even though we have many large demonstrations, we have pictures of them, hundreds of thousands of people, you didn't hear about that because the media is afraid to speak about it. Because one of the Zionist ploys is anybody who stands up and tries to oppose what they're doing is condemned and called as branded an anti-Semite. And that's a ploy of Zionism. What they try to do is mix and confuse Judaism with their secular movement. And so therefore, the media is afraid to write about our demonstrations even though they're very large. Occasionally it gets written, Iranian broadcast wrote about it, and this and that. But when the pictures are there, you can see. We were doing this for the beginning of time. From the beginning when Zionism came, we were fighting Zionism. And the Jewish people were still loyal to God, hate it, stand up in opposition, and feel the pain and suffering of the Palestinian people. I'm not going to get into the issue of which I wanted to, that they do autopsies, dig up graves, archaeological digs, which in any other land would be, the world would be up in arms. And they do it to the Jewish sages. They dig up graves, and we have pictures of it, and we fight them constantly because they don't believe in afterlife, they don't believe in spirit, they don't believe, and they do it because for them it's a grave. They know how old the bones are, 1,000 years old, they know the day the person died. So that's what they do. Now, why is it so important to differentiate between Zionism and Judaism? First of all, because God's name is being is desecrated. We have to sanctify His name by clarifying that it's not a holiness that's being done. Also, it's very important because when you want to have a remedy, when you're looking to remedy something, a problem, you have to know what the sickness is. You could keep on giving medicines, but if you don't know the sickness, you're operating on the wrong foot. You're doing something totally wrong. If you know the problem, that it's not a religion, the problem is not the fight between religions and Jews. Jews and Muslims have been living for hundreds of years. When did